everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting my case study on the moral panic around video games, particularly from the 1980s and the 1990s. This panic cast young players as folk devils, to use a term from the Stanley Cohen's article, and it reshaped the way society and juvenile justice system responded to youth culture. Here's a little example of what the 80s video game culture looked like, especially for those of you that didn't live through it like myself. In the early 1980s, games like Pac-Man, Asteroids, Defender, and one of my favorites, Donkey Kong, exploded in popularity. Arcades were packed with kids carrying quarters, and for the first time, video games became central to youth culture. But with the popularity came fear. Adults worried that gaming was addictive, harmful to eyesight, harmful to children's wrists, and even corrupting their morals. In fact, in 1983, New York Times article bluntly asked, video games diversion or danger, according to an article written by Gross in 1983. Following Cohen's framework, young gamers and folk devils, symbols of adult anxieties about crime, idleness, and cultural decline. As Acklin explains, youth are often framed as in crisis, seen as both vulnerable and dangerous at the same time. The media amplified these fears. News reports warned that players were hypnotized by games, losing track of time, skipping school, and wasting money. NBC News ran a segment describing video games as an obsession that pulled children away from reality, according to an article, Video Game Controversy in the 1980s and 1990s. These exaggerated headlines and sound bites made arcades a symbol of delinquency, even though most kids were just having fun. One particular game that received a lot of criticism was Mortal Kombat. I'm going to show you a clip of the old school original Mortal Kombat. By the 1990s, the panic intensified with the release of violent games like Mortal Kombat. The gameplay featured graphic violence, blood, gore, and even spines being ripped from the bodies, according to a description by Hosh in 2019. Critics argue that those games would desensitize kids to aggression. Fox News segments showed parents calling the games gross and worrying that children would reenact violence in real life. Here's where we see Howard Becker's ideas of moral entrepreneurs in action. Figures like Senator Joseph Lieberman became the loudest voices condemning video games. In 1993 Senate hearings, Lieberman warned that instead of enriching children's minds, games were teaching them to enjoy inflicting violence. And that's per an article from C-SPAN via NanoGamer in 2025. The consequences of the panic were significant. Lieberman pushed for legislation to ban violent video games. And although Congress didn't ban them, the pressure led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, which is called the ESRB, in 1994. The ESRB rating system is still used today to classify games by age appropriateness and content. And that's according to the ESRB website. But the fight didn't stop there. In 2005, California passed a law banning the sale of violent games to minors. The law was challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court in Brown v. Entertainment Merchants Association in 2011. The court struck it down, ruling that video games were protected under the First Amendment just like books and films. Writing for the majority, the Justice Anton Scalia explained, like the protected books, plays, movies that preceded them, video games communicate ideas and even social messages through familiar literature devices. That's from Brown v. EMA in 2011. This decision showed that while moral panic can drive legislation, constitutional protections set limits for how far the government can go in regulating youth culture. So what does this all mean? Panic over video games fits into a broader sociological pattern. Every generation sees new youth media as dangerous. In fact, in the 1950s, it was comic books. In the 1980s, it was arcades. And today, it's TikTok and smartphones. Each time, young people become the folk devils and adults call for new restrictions, surveillance, and policies. In conclusion, the video game Moral Panic shows how society constructs youth as both at risk and a risk. Media and moral entrepreneurs exaggerated the dangers, leading to policies like arcade restrictions, the ESRB, and even Supreme Court challenges. And while the specific technology changes, the cycle of moral panic repeats with every new platform for young people that young people embrace. Thank you. I hope you guys have a great end of the class.